Greetings, Starfighters. Welcome to Mad Science Films. I'm Jimmy P, filmmaker and sexual astronaut. First up, guys, please check out our fourth feature film for free on YouTube. Just search for Little Monster or click on the link in the show notes below. This episode is a very special episode, and I'm joined by a very special guest, a filmmaker at the cutting edge of web series and using existing platforms to his own benefit, Mr. Mark Garvey. So in terms of funding it, which came first then? Was it the funding, or did you you had a chunk of money and then you had to draw up a budget for it?
So the money was essentially provided by my wage, and there was very little money involved. So it was a case of buying wood for the coffin, buying the cart for the coffin, and then costumes, and of course the sort of daily running costs of actors, petrol, food and drink, etc. All have all the equipment already. So there's no locations that we had to pay for, because the majority of it's on a goddamn public footpath and things like that out in the wilderness. So there's no interiors. Early on, there was the idea of having a reenactment place, getting an old village and stuff like that. But because of coronavirus and lockdown, all of these places were closed and inaccessible. And it seemed gratuitous to me. I'd start things, he's already on the journey, and drip feed that information as to why later on, as opposed to see why he's going on the journey at the beginning. It seemed gratuitous. Although it would have, if circumstances were different, maybe we would have had more interior scenes, stop for the night somewhere, get taken into someone's home or whatever. But yeah, it was a very, very, very low budget. A lot of the costumes were, obviously there's like 30 plus people in it. But a lot of the costumes were sort of repurposed, old stuff that we sort of spent a long time scuffing up and sewing up and patching up and destroying. And a lot of the costumes were used and then recycled and changed for someone else, which hopefully you don't necessarily notice in the film. But black and white, of course, helps. And a lot of those garments, in black and white, they could be any given colour, but a lot of them are like hot salmon pink, and what was going on there was like Wish.com, for example. Don't ever use Wish.com for anything, by the way, but Wish.com would have these okay looking things that were like I don't know, a tenner or a fiver or whatever, but then they'd have a hot pink one that would be £1. I made the coffin myself, which was a hilarious series of disasters involving cutting myself and blisters and putting nails through things where nails shouldn't go. But in a way that made sense, because the coffin and the cart were meant to be sort of like the everyman's product. So the fact that it was a bit ropey and misshapen kind of suited. It wasn't, meant to be a pristine top of the line coffin, thank Christ. But yeah, so in terms of budget, the whole thing cost well under £1,000 in total, and it was making rolls and sandwiches and stuff like that was really the main expense was feeding those people that were involved on a daily basis over the summer. It's probably the cheapest project we've ever done, and everyone was free and available because lockdown. So we were meeting in these obscure woods. I was sending pins, and people were parking in lay-bys, and the main guy's in it throughout, but most of the other people were only in a scene. So it was really nice. People hadn't seen people for ages, so we'd meet out in a beautiful wilderness and smash out an individual scene, and then go to the pub and have a drink or whatever. It was a really nice summer, actually.
So, I noticed from the credits, you were your own DP?
Yeah, it was kind of a necessary evil, because we were doing a lot of this during COVID, so the maximum 6 people, and I really wanted this to be as strange and as weird as possible. And so yeah, I kind of knew exactly what I wanted, so it made sense for a variety of reasons for me to do it. And I've shot the majority of previous stuff, and because we had such a small cast and crew at any one given time, to have an additional person, we couldn't have had an additional person. It would have violated the lockdown rules often. So yeah, shot it myself, and just tried to make it as peculiar and as strange and as otherworldly as possible, to try and bring the forest, that nature, to life, and give it this sort of hallucinatory quality. The idea was, hopefully through the cinematography, to sort of suggests that the landscape was a character and was alive in some way, or was sentient perhaps. But also the hope was that some audience members might assume that this is not real and this is purgatory, or he's, you know, on some sort of you know, trial of some sort in some artificial landscape, or perhaps he's died, or perhaps he's, you know, under the influence of some hallucinogenic mushrooms or what have you. So yeah, it was meant to be as trippy and as weird and as kaleidoscopic as could be, but still maintain that, you know, you can tell what's going on and you can see what's going on, and it, you know, it's not entirely abstract. But so yeah, it was a necessary evil to shoot it myself, and we really downsized as well. So in previous projects we'd used, you know, lots of equipment, massive gear. We've had loads more people helping out, but on this one, because of the context of coronavirus, and because we were walking up massive hills and miles from cars into the deepest, darkest Hertfordshire woodlands, we travelled really light. So everything, lenses, all the kit was basically in a backpack, and then, you know, all the sound gear our sound recordist had on her. So we travelled incredibly light, because of course we had the coffin in the cart that we needed to get all over the place as well. And I really regret not making the lid available to come off, because we could have put stuff in there and that would have lightened the load. But my carpentry skills aren't great, so putting a hinge on that probably would have been the end of that coffin, I think. But yeah, it was a really fun summer, you know, out and about, and we got so lucky with the weather. I think had we tried to do a project of that scale, it's 21 days we shot and a few nights. Had we tried to do that this summer, it would have been an entirely different film, because it would have been grey, it would have been miserable, and it would have been very wet. I mean, I don't know what it's like where you are, but it's a pretty horrendous day right now out here. But yeah, you know, this summer was not ideal for shooting something like that. You know, we got so lucky, insects everywhere, blazing light coming through the trees, dappling sunlight on the floor. Yeah, it was hard because of course we were, you know, nearly fainting from the heat, but for the aesthetic and for the look and the feel of the film, it was perfect weather, really.
So what camera did you shoot the actual series on?
So Towards the Devil was shot on something called a Sigma FP, which is a really tiny little camera. It's what I'm recording on now. But yeah, it's like the size of a phone. It's the world's smallest full frame camera. So really nice little thing. And yeah, I've got a bunch of L-mount glass for it as well. And you know, we had all these weird accessories, all these sort of bits of glass and prisms that we were using to create these reflections and abstract.
Yeah, I loved the visuals,
you know, hazy
the
elements. Yeah, so there was a ton of that going on. But yeah, just this little Sigma thing, and you know, you can hold it in your hand. We could have it around our neck. So when we've worked before with big old cameras and, you know, lights everywhere, and you know, we've drawn a lot of attention to ourselves, and we're very guerrilla. You know, we rarely ask for permission. We just sort of get away with what we can and try not to you know, annoy anyone too much. But this was different because we were so small scale. We didn't have you know, loads of production assistants and runners helping us out or whatever, and we only had a cast usually of 2 people in any one given time. But of course we were drawing attention to ourselves in a very different way in that we had this guy in this costume carrying a cart. But what we found is people knew immediately what was going on. It's really unusual because usually people freak out, you know, panic, like don't know what's going on, even though we've got these massive cameras and we're wearing high vis or whatever. But particularly on Uni and Jack, you know, people saw that costume and were, you know, freaking out, thinking that, you know, the terrorist activity or whatever. But in this instance, they saw Simon in all his get up and with his coffin, like, oh wow, can we take a picture? And people were very sort of interested in what we were doing and very welcoming. I think there was no question we were making a movie. It was bizarre because we were trying to be so subtle and downsize, and we had this tiny little camera. But for once, everybody knew we were making a movie. Whereas in the past, we've had, you know, lots of big cameras and lights, and we're very, very obviously making a film. But people are like, oh, let's call the police. It's terrorist activity or whatever. But even though we were clearly making a movie, whereas this time around it wasn't at all clear, but everybody seemed to know. But yeah, it was great. You know, we were in public spaces at all times, out and about, no interior scenes. And people were really respectful, I think because of coronavirus as well, but he might be coming down a path and people would see and they would kind of wait and watch and maybe film on their phone and have a chat with us. Whereas usually people are much more suspicious or anxious about what we're doing. So yeah, it was a great shoot. It was a good fun shoot. I just wish the coffin in the cart weren't as heavy as they were.
Nice. So, being your own DP, then, did you work off shot lists or storyboards? You know, and also I'm thinking just in terms of keeping stuff straight in your head of what you needed to get on the day.
No pre-production of that nature. What there was a script that was essentially a shot list. So, you know, each line or each paragraph or whatever, that is a particular shot with or without dialogue, and then there's a bullet point which indicates that's where we cut. So. So every shot was essentially planned and prepared. Maybe on the day there might have been some variation where we didn't know there was going to be that crazy thing on the tree there, and we might have moved things around a little bit. But the approach was to follow the script exactly. We know we're going to be on this guy in a medium shot when he says that. We know we're going to go close when this person says that. We know the line. It 100% follows the 180 degrees, always going in the same direction. So yeah, we visited all of the places in advance and blocked it out approximately. So, and very few things popped up where we needed to problem solve or needed to change things. And there was also the danger that if we did change things or throw in some impro or whatever, then that might have a bigger knock-on effect on the overall structure of the interactive choices and the layout of the entire project. So, I'm well up for improvisation, and that's something that we've really embraced on many occasions. But I think people were less reluctant to throw in improv because of ye olde English. People weren't necessarily confident or comfortable coming up with their own dialogue because it might not have been appropriate for the time. So we tried very hard to have no anachronisms, and everything that was said was used at that time in that particular area. So we stuck to the script for once and really followed that. There was no storyboards, there was no shot list, but the script essentially is a shot list. I think we pretty much stuck to it. There was the one exception was there's a scene, I don't know if you would have seen it dependent on your choices, but there's a scene in which at night time where he encounters a witch in some candles, some flames, and they have a nice dance, and that was much more planned, but we had a drone. Oh god. So we undenied about whether or not to use a drone from the conception of the idea until the edit, and I thought a drone would take you out of the historical context. I thought if you see this big vast contemporary shot that you see in every goddamn advert and music video, it would just snap you out of that world. But there was one drone, we tried to do some drone shots several times, and on every occasion something went wrong, and on this ring of fire we were going to get just a static bird's eye shot from above of the ring of candles, and the drone clipped a tree and exploded, and as it always does. So and then it started to rain, and it was midnight, and we were in these woods, and it was a bit weird, and a jogger went past bizarrely as well, which freaked us out. Probably God knows how the jogger felt. But at that point I had a little tantrum and threw the document away and said, just fucking do it now. And we filmed it a variety of times, and because there was no audio being recorded from that, I was barking stuff, and so that was entirely improvised, for better or for worse. But the vast majority of it, like 98% of it, was following the guidance, following the instructions, and sticking to the document, really. Yeah, very little wiggle room on that one.
So I noticed from Union Jack that there's a lot of familiar faces in 'Twas the Devil as well. So when you were coming up with the project and writing the script, was anybody effectively precast? You were writing for certain actors in mind? And also, were there any roles where you're like, haven't got a clue, and you had newcomers on board as well?
So a bit of both. Simon has been, featured in the last like 5 projects, often in a major role, and it made sense when this idea was being developed. I was picturing Simon as Zachary as the main character. So yeah, essentially that was written for him, and it was very much a Simon Cleary character, a troubled, disturbed person who's has moments of doubt and moments of anger and outburst. So that was bespoke, written with Simon in mind. There's a lot of familiar characters that you would have seen in Union Jack and from other work prior to that, and from more recent stuff as well. So yeah, I'm very lucky. I've got a decent team of people who know what they're doing and enjoy the process and are on board. And we've worked together for a number of years, in some cases over a decade now, probably. So yeah, a lot of them were involved in this in some capacity. And sometimes, one of these characters that has a scene that challenges our hero in some way, it was like, oh, this would be perfect for this guy, or this would be perfect for a particular person. There was some sort of wiggle room. There's a couple of roles that were a bit, I'm not sure who'd be particularly tough. So there's a child actress in a couple of scenes, dependent on your choices, and that was always going to be a bit of a worry. We need a young girl, but she needs to do some pretty dark stuff, and in one particular strand, she kills someone, her father, who could be doing some really dark, horrible stuff to her, as was commonplace at the time, according to our research. So that was a real challenge, and we just got really, really, really lucky that our composer, Bill, who I've worked with for many years, his daughter, who's about the right age as we wanted, was getting into performing arts and going to acting and dance classes. So yeah, we just got really, really lucky, and the lovely little thing, she smashed it and really enjoyed stabbing someone and robbing them once they were dead on the floor. So yeah, we got really lucky. So yeah, it was difficult really to get too many newcomers. We'd like to have new people come in with each project to have, keep it fresh and new ideas and new faces. But really, given the context of the timing, it wasn't ideal to be roping people in, and most performers were just the one scene. So, it would have been a big ask to get someone to come down and learn and introduce and put on a stupid goddamn costume. So yeah, a lot of the costumes were given to the actors in advance. So I would drive around to wherever and drop off a box with their costume, and then they were to try it on and adjust it or alter it. I asked them to sort of personalize it and do something a bit different or weird in keeping with their character. So and send photos through to make sure that it was all good and was going to work. And then I'd make the black and white and see what it looked like in black and white. But yeah, so a couple of sort of new people partially involved, but really it was the good old crew. And given Corona and the complications of film, we kind of kept it largely in-house. But yeah, I've got a great team available who know what they're doing and enjoy that, and we work well together, and it's always good fun. I think that the key thing is, yes, it can be stressful, and yes, it can be difficult and challenging, and yes, I can lose my shit and throw tripods around and have an outburst or a tantrum, but doing that in front of a professional external actor that's come up from London or whatever is quite embarrassing. But doing it in front of one of my good mates who happens to be a creative collaborator, it's fine. They expect it. They'd probably be disappointed if we did a project and somebody didn't have an outburst, somebody didn't bleed, somebody didn't do something really embarrassing that there's going to be held against them for the rest of their lives.
So when new people get in contact, are you looking at like show reels, or do you ask them to self-tape, audition? Have you, what's your preference to seeing whether they're right for the role you've got in mind?
I guess it depends on the nature of the contact, but if someone is going out of their way to get in touch with you, that almost, is enough. That suggests that if they're that keen, and if they're saying they've obviously watched the work and they have particular things to say about it, it's not a blanket bot email that they're sending to everyone on Mandy or whatever, because they've clearly watched the work. So that would be sufficient enough to pique my interest. often they would attach a website link that would have a show reel or and again, I guess geography has to play a part in it as well. And yeah, it depends on what the project would be and you know, their suitability for a particular role. You know, I guess each project and each role and each relationship with a collaborator is different and changeable. But yeah, so the next project that we've got coming up, it's a huge cast, and it involves a lot of different diverse characters. So that's going to involve casting the net out and trying to get new people in. So that'll be an interesting thing to do. We need a lot of new blood for that. And it'll be, do we go about posting adverts? Do we try and look at people and identify who we would want and then contact them directly? Do we talk to agencies? So we're quite a way off of that process yet, but it's going to be fascinating to sort of need 20 or 30 performers and not just be pulling out my mobile and calling my, you know, who's been in a couple of things and say, we need you.